Hi, I'm Helen. I came on the Restored Lives course back in 2011 after the breakdown of my marriage in 2009. I was married to my husband for just shy of 4 years, but we met when I was 17 and we'd actually been in a relationship together for a total of 14 years at that point. It came as a complete surprise to me when he came home one day and told me that he'd been having an affair. He quite rapidly decided that he didn't want to try to repair the marriage and instead went to continue his relationship. He went on to get married to that lady and they have a child together. Usually this week on Restored Lives, we talk about other relationships. So we talk about your relationships with your family and friends, and also we talk about co-parenting and what it's like to parent as a divorced person. But this group is made up of people who didn't have children as part of their marriage. So we wanted to look at some of the unique challenges that people like me and like you often face when going through separation and divorce. There are some aspects around children that might be helpful to discuss. It might be that trying for children or your partner not wanting children when you did, or the other way around, might be part of your story. And that should also be something that you look at and address and process as you recover from your separation and divorce. Or it might be that you hoped to have a family with your ex, and now you're wondering whether you'll ever have that opportunity or not. I definitely think it's worth thinking about and considering what you want for your future. It's possible to have fertility tests to find out how fertile you are, so that you can make some decisions about that whilst you're sort of fully informed. The breakdown of your relationship is obviously a barrier to having children, but it is worth thinking about your future and what you might want. Perhaps you don't want another relationship, and that's okay. Perhaps you didn't want children, and that's okay. But for many, the desire to have children is strong, and perhaps a consequence of your marriage breaking down is that you might not be able to have children in the future. One of the resources I found really helpful was a book by Jodie Day called Living the Life Unexpected, where she examines all the challenges and issues around not having children, choosing not to have children, and what she describes as social infertility, which is basically her term for when the situations of your life means that you haven't been able to have children, perhaps because you didn't have a relationship that you felt was stable and strong enough to bring children into. You might also feel an additional pressure to get into a new relationship because you want children. Again, I think it's really important to process all those feelings so that you don't end up just crashing into a new relationship and causing a lot more hurt and harm. You might also feel a pressure to get into a new relationship because you feel like your biological clock is ticking. And obviously that's really difficult to deal with. But it's important to remember that a lot of that pressure is coming from yourself. It might be worth considering having your fertility checked so that you know all the facts and can consider whether you want to freeze eggs or sperm or do any of those things to give you a little bit more time and perhaps take the pressure off. Sometimes people say really unhelpful things like, well, at least you didn't have a child with your ex. That can be really painful if actually you were desperate for children and you can't sort of add that into the conversation because it's very sort of raw and painful for you. So it's important to sort of look at all of those aspects and find somebody that you feel comfortable to discuss those sort of related losses that you might be feeling. It also might be that you feel that people minimise the pain that you're going through because somehow your marriage isn't seen as being as concrete as marriages where the couple have had children. I think that's something else that divorcees and separated people without children have experienced. The first thing that I found about being a single divorced person was that my friends and family, well, some of them anyway, expected me to jump into a new relationship quite quickly. I remember lots of people sort of saying to me, "Oh, plenty more fish in the sea," which it is really tempting. And I think when you've been married and you're used to being in an intimate relationship, especially if you've been living with somebody or you've been with them for quite some time, it's a real shock to suddenly be living on your own and you haven't got anybody there at the end of the day. So I just wanted to sort of share a few things from my own experience. I kind of made every mistake in the book, really. I definitely jumped into dating too soon after my marriage broke down. I think it was less than a month and had my first date, which admittedly I kind of fell into. It was a bit of an accidental date because when a chap in a bar asked me to go and have a drink with him, my usual response of, "Oh no, sorry, I'm married," obviously didn't apply any longer. So I sort of said yes because I didn't really know what else to say, and it was a real disaster. And then I jumped into online dating, which is really, it can be fun, don't get me wrong. There are definitely some good things about it. But when you're recovering from separation, I think dating too soon can just compound some of the feelings of rejection and can make it quite difficult. I think even if you are fortunate enough to meet somebody who you really like, who seems to be a good match for you, the problem is hurt people tend to hurt people. I definitely made some really bad mistakes. I dated an old friend for a while who was absolutely lovely, but I was still confused about my own feelings. I was still trying to process a lot from my relationship, and I'm really sorry to say that I think I hurt him quite badly. I also found it really difficult to sort of process my own feelings whilst I was dating because it all just gets jumbled up together. You know, how do I really feel about this new person? Am I just missing my ex, or is this not a good relationship? So I would really encourage you, obviously we're all at different points in our journey, but I would really encourage you to think twice about dating and just make sure that you are really ready, if indeed that is something that you want to do. Some people choose to stay on their own. And I definitely think there's a big advantage to focusing on yourself instead, in terms of, one of the advantages of your new single status is that you can spend time finding out what you enjoy, getting to know yourself again, getting to figure out what is important for you, what your sense of identity is, what gives you energy, what gives you joy, and what you find sort of tiring that maybe you want to reduce. So I think the thing that I found quite helpful was turning myself into a bit of a project and thinking about trying lots of different activities and interests and finding out what it meant to me to be a happy single person. Once I'd done that and got that cracked, I was in a much better place to consider any future relationships I might want to have. I think the other thing about rushing into a new relationship is that it's easy for that to become a crutch. And rather than actually dealing with the things that you need to deal with, you end up sort of relying on this other person. I remember a friend of mine once compared it to this sort of visual image of limping along to somebody with your broken heart in a carrier bag and sort of handing it over to them and expecting them to fix it for you. And I don't think that really works. So I think, far better to take some time out, focus on investing in good friendships, and getting to know yourself, I think, is a really good use of your time at the moment, rather than rushing into the whole dating scene, even though there might well be pressure for you to do that. I was fortunate enough to meet somebody once I'd recovered from the breakdown of my relationship, and I'm now remarried. And I think I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because I I think when you've been married once already and had the experience of a relationship breaking down, that does leave you with some things that need to be processed. And some of those things actually you can't really deal with until you're in a new long-term relationship. For me, one of those things was trust. I felt like I'd dealt with the trust issues from the breakdown of my first marriage, but it wasn't until I was getting into a more serious relationship with my now second husband that I recognised that actually I still needed to go some way in terms of dealing with trust. I think that was because it wasn't until I was in a new long-term relationship that I really put myself in a position where I had to trust anybody else. For me, I came to the conclusion that actually there was no way really to ever completely prevent the possibility that somebody in a new relationship might do the same thing as my ex had done, have an affair, go off with somebody else and leave me on my own again. The resolution I've found for that is just really finding that place of acceptance where I know that the best thing I can do is nurture the relationship that I'm in, but I also know, now that I've got the tools and skills that I've learnt on this course, that if I should ever have to go through relationship breakdown again, I would have the tools to deal with that. But I think part of loving somebody else and being open to new relationships is accepting that one of the sort of costs of doing business, as it were, is that you might get hurt again. And that can be quite a difficult idea when you're still processing the breakdown of your marriage or significant relationship. The purpose of this session really is to raise some of those issues and give us an opportunity to discuss them together.